Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. I'm your host, Cindy, and today I'm really excited to introduce you to Kasey D'Amato, and we're going to be talking about how to negotiate a successful business. So welcome, Kasey. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Cindy.
And for those of you who don't know Kasey, she is a highly accomplished business coach with a really proven track record of success. The founder of a groundbreaking skincare line, which is kind of interesting. Kasey understands what it takes to build and grow a successful business herself. And now she shares her business and negotiation expertise with service-based entrepreneurs who are feeling stuck or overwhelmed and unable to scale their businesses, which so often happens at various points of the journey. And by providing that sort of easy to implement mindset and strategy guidance, she helps to empower her clients to get that confidence and clarity and the skills they need to really 10x their businesses. So tell us how you came to do that line of work, Case.
Yeah. So, gosh, it's been a long journey. Like so many of us that are entrepreneurs, we go through so many different iterations of our business journeys. So, for me, I probably my first business journey was started in 2010. I started as a dermatology PA, as a
Ah,
clinical practitioner, and I got interested in the business of medicine, and from there started coaching medical professionals. And then I was standing in the kitchen one day, and I said to my husband, "Should we take on a bigger venture? Should we do something bigger and bolder?" And he said, "Yeah, if you want to do it, let's do it." And we started a skincare line, which then we had some investor support there. We launched
wow.
globally, and we've now sort of exited that business. And I have another business. I still coach medical professionals, so on a lot of negotiation strategies, a lot of career negotiations, a lot of business negotiations, and I help now entrepreneurs scale their business, from mid six figures, mid seven figures and beyond to get the right mindset using a lot of negotiation along the way to take their business to the next level.
Oh, sounds fabulous. You got my attention. And when you said about dermatology, I am sitting here looking at where I bastardized taking my own stitches out yesterday. Sadly, I did a lot of sun damage when I was young, and they keep having to cut pieces of me away now as a result of all that skin damage when I was young. So now you'd mentioned about mindset, and I always preach that negotiating our mindset is our first and most important negotiation. And people don't think of it as a negotiation, but every day we negotiate with ourselves in a myriad of ways. So what role do you think mindset plays in achieving success in business?
Yeah, mindset is, I think, the number one, and it's undervalued by so many people.
Yeah,
People focus on the numbers, and I love numbers. I talk numbers all the time, but if mindset isn't on straight, then you'll
yeah,
get easily broken down. You'll hit those roadblocks will get in your way, and the fear will be overcome, and the negotiation will become emotional instead of a win-win outcome driven goal. And so the mindset, focusing on what you really want in life and kind of your focusing on that vision for the future, and every action that you're taking, whether it's business, whether it's personal and negotiation, is taking you one step closer to that long term, so that you don't get stuck in the day-to-day grind, or in the one situation that you woke up to today and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened with this
yeah.
client or with this team member." And those are the things that they become heavy feeling, and with the right mindset, you brush those things off. It's just part of the entrepreneurial journey, and you just keep on focusing on that North Star and the long-term vision.
Oh, so good. And it affects everything, right? And I'm really glad that you mentioned fear at the beginning because people rarely talk about that, I think, right? They think of that as the sort of woo-woo piece for people who are out there teaching that, but it is such an important part of being successful in business and in life. So I'd love if you don't mind sharing, what's something that a fear that you face that you've overcome, or maybe that you're still facing today, because we all have them, I think, if we're being
I
honest.
think we're all still facing some elements of fear. There's always two types of fear. It's either the fear of failure or the fear of success.
Yeah.
So we're either afraid that something's not going to work out perfect, or it's not going to happen the way. What if it doesn't work? What if I go down this big venture? What if I make a fool of myself? What if I start a podcast or a YouTube channel, or it's
Yeah.
something on social media and I look silly, and all these things we have these fear of. And then the fear of success. What if I do achieve this big goal, but it overwhelms my life? It overtakes everything. What if what I'm thinking of is so big and I'm so scared of that big, grandiose vision, because I'm thinking, well, if it's that big of an idea, it's going to encompass everything and it's going to take over and I will have no work-life balance and I will have no time for my family or for my loved ones. So I'm just going to be afraid of that level of success.
Yeah.
And so most people gravitate either the fear of failure or the fear of success. And for me, I definitely struggle with the fear of success. I think big and then I'll think like, oh, but is that too big? What
Yeah.
if that becomes such a big project? Could I really handle that? Could I build a team for that? And I think that's the struggle that a lot of us as entrepreneurs probably fear more, is the fear of success than the fear of failure. Although a lot of people, the perfectionism side of me has that fear of failure as well, no doubt about it.
Oh, and thank you so much for sharing that vulnerably, because I find people everybody, when they talk about fear, one of the first things that comes to mind is that fear of failure. But I often have people scratching their head when I talk about fear of success. And I think it can be more crippling because we end up sabotaging ourselves, right? So for our listeners out there, really want to put a pin in that for you. You know, Kasey shared her experience vulnerably, and I challenge all of you to look at where that fear of success is showing up for you. You know, if you find that you are getting some traction in whatever area of your life and suddenly things plateau or worse, start dipping, chances are there's at some level you've self-sabotaged because there's that fear of success. How is this going to affect my relationships, right? So I
Yep,
totally hear you.
exactly.
And I had that. I was afraid to charge what I was worth for a long time because, you know, I grew up in a low rental apartment building in a, you know, sort of tough neighborhood. And then as my law firm grew and as I got more well known, it was, you know, that I think that fear of success subconsciously kicks in and we end up finding ways to hold ourselves back. So
Fear of this charging, fear of building the team. People want to hold on to the control, think that nobody else on the team could execute that particular task. So they're afraid
yeah,
to build a team. But then without the team in place, you can't
yeah.
grow. So yeah, fear of price, fear of team. Those are all the things that hold us back from that big
Yeah.
vision.
Yeah, so good. And since we're talking about mindset so much here, do you have any tips for how our listeners can negotiate winning mindsets?
Yeah, winning mindset. I have a tool I love. It's called the 4 F's. And I know you and I were just talking about this a moment ago, the 4 F's, and thinking about mindset. I always think about the future, visualizing the future. What does the perfect life look like? The perfect personal life, business life. What are we doing every day? If we could just wave a magic wand and create that life, what would it be? And then start to forecast. So first I'm thinking about the future and then I'm forecasting, okay, this is the perfect life. What am I doing today that's taking one step closer in my personal life and in business, and both, and marrying the two together? And then I'm thinking about the fear and what is holding me back. Is it that fear of failure, the fear of success? And typically, if there's fear in there, it's because I don't have enough
Yeah.
support. So whether that is a team or whether that is collaborators or whether that is mentors and coaches, it's the fear dissipates when you have a level
Yeah.
of support.
Yeah.
And then the fourth F is fun. Is it fun? Am I waking up every day fundamentally thinking like, am I having a good time doing this? And if
Yeah.
not, then I'm reevaluating something in what
Yeah.
I'm doing, how I'm structuring it, systems, and I'm looking back at that future vision and all the steps going into it. What is it that's not fun? And I'm going to make a change.
Oh, that is great. So we've got future, forecast,
Yeah.
fear, and fun. Did I get that right?
Yep.
That's
Yep. You
awesome.
got it.
And I know like one of the struggles that we are finally hearing so much about, it used to be like just buck up and plow on, right? But now I think we're hearing more and more about people being concerned about making sure they're achieving that work-life balance or work-life
Yeah.
harmony, as I
Yeah.
prefer. Which tell us how your sort of 4F system can help create that work-life balance or harmony.
Yeah, 100%. I kind of call it the forecast cube. So you're forecasting both your revenue, right? We're business owners, we're entrepreneurs. So we're thinking about cash flow to some extent. We're thinking about numbers to some extent. Then we're also forecasting time. So how are we spending our time, both in our business and in our personal life? And how are we allocating that time for what we want to propel forward? One of my favorite quotes is a Tony Robbins quote, which is, where focus goes,
Yeah.
energy flows. So, it's that where we're spending the energy and the time is what is going to advance, and where we're
Yeah.
neglecting energy and time and focus is going to fall by the wayside, is going to suffer. And so I really hold true when I'm thinking about work-life balance is focus goes, energy flows. If we're focused only on the numbers and only on the revenue, business may be soaring, but relationships might suffer. And vice versa, if we're neglecting the business and we're putting all of our personal needs in the forefront, then the business is going to suffer. And so being very intentional about that forecast cube where we're looking at the financial side of things, the time side of things, and then integrating that fun back into it. What are we doing that is unusual? What is an adventure day? My husband and I have a date night. My husband is the CFO, which is chief fun officer, not financial officer. He's chief of fun. So I was like,
Yeah.
we need to do something fun. So it's a staycation, it's a new hike, and it's typically something in nature to
Yeah.
reset our minds, completely reset from business, from other interpersonal relationships, with some kind of small little simple adventure that you
Yeah.
can do that's new, that stimulates your brain as something new and something interesting
Yeah.
to focus on.
Yeah. And we do have to be intentional about that. We are such a to-do, task-driven society, right? It is so deeply conditioned in us that we have, as far as you were saying that, we went to the drive-in last night. So I would say definitely something new and exciting, or maybe a
Yes.
total throwback.
Yes,
I can't
yes.
remember the last time I'd been at a drive-in. It's all changed. I'm like, what do you mean they don't have speakers? I'm totally dating myself here. What do you mean it's all through the radio? How do you keep the radio going when you turn the car off, right? It's like, so.
Yes, yes,
It was
exactly.
great.
Yeah, something new to stimulate your brain, something
Yeah.
fun and something new. And that's what the mindset's all about, especially if you're doing it with a loved one, the significant other, or a very dear friend.
Yeah.
Something new, reconnecting,
Yeah.
so that you're getting that work-life balance and you can thrive in both areas. It is possible. Many people think that it's
Yeah.
not, but
Yeah.
it is if you it's just about being intentional about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it can be small things or really big things. Like we did a big bucket list trip to Antarctica in January, but it doesn't have to
Yes.
be something that extreme. It can be something really
Yes.
small but intentional. Now, I think some of
Exactly.
these problems are particularly challenging for women, I think,
Yes.
generally, and women in business in particular. We're always trying to juggle
Yes.
and carrying all the guilt and all the other baggage with it. So,
Yes.
what are some strategies
Yes.
that you feel that every woman should know when they start a business?
Yes, I work a lot with women, and it's very interesting. I have men clients and women clients, and it's very interesting the difference with the mindset. And women do tend to feel pulled. They feel
Yeah.
very stretched between the family dynamic, the business responsibilities, and sometimes they do feel held back. They
Yeah.
feel that they want to be a good parent, they want to be a good mother, so maybe they shouldn't push the business to the next level, because what if that means they
Yeah.
wouldn't be a good parent? And so I think that with women, especially working mothers,
Yeah.
it is really extra important to focus on the long-term vision. What is the goal of the business? What is the legacy that they want to leave behind with their business? Is there an end? Is there an exit plan? There was with my skincare company, there was always an exit plan.
Mm,
Is there an exit plan with the business? And are we driving it to a certain goal? And really, again, being intentional about that time, balance with family and setting boundaries so that
yeah.
when it's family time, there's no screens, there's no distractions from business. It is family time, dedicated quality family time. And when it's business time, unless it's an emergency, it's business time. So I'm
Yeah.
not a fan of multitasking. I think that's where the
Yes.
boundaries crumble and things start to fall apart when we are at the soccer game, but we're really answering emails,
Oh,
or
that's
sending voice
true.
memos or thing. We're not being intention. And then somebody scores a goal and we miss it. And then, all those things. I think it's the boundaries on the time, in my opinion. Dedicate the time, be present on family time, dedicate the time, be present on business, and think about those long goals again with business, so that you're always focusing on why did you start this business? Where do you want it to grow to? Where do you want it to be at the time of an exit? Or will it be maybe be a legacy for your family?
So much gold there. And I really want to circle back and put a pin in that piece about multitasking. That really struck a chord for me. And for all of our listeners out there, I want you to really hear that. And for women in particular, I think we have really been conditioned to pride ourselves on our ability to multitask. And I was totally guilty of that. And recently, a lot of scientific studies are coming out to say there's really no such thing. You may be able to do a bunch of things, but what you're doing is turning your brain off on that for a moment and then moving it here and
Yes.
then moving it back here. So yes, we may have our brains going click, 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 like a train, and however many miles an hour. But you totally hit the nail on the head, because when our function is when we're at work and we're thinking about the kids. You know, we end up feeling guilty about that because we think we're not being a great career woman. And then when we're at home and we're thinking about work, we feel guilty about that because we think we're not being good. Be present. Just give yourself the space,
just be present,
and grace to be fully present. So I really love that. Now, I'm sure in business, you have seen a lot of big egos or strong personalities. So do you have any special tips for us on how to manage those big egos so that we can find more creative solutions amongst a diverse personality types? Let's put it that way.
Yes, I have seen my share of egos, especially on the medical side of things, and we coach a lot there. So some of the things that we really focus on, we're negotiating, you know, some of our clients are negotiating with, you know, big hospital administrators or some very top-notch surgeons and things like that. And it's, you know, people that have the big ego like for their egos to be stroked. So they like for people to tell them that they're good at what they do. They are good at what they do most of the time. So when negotiating or having a conversation with somebody like that, I like to call it the sandwich technique. So you're offering something that is complementary, and that's kind of a feel good. It's a little dopamine rush for the person on the other side. They're like, oh, wow, this person thinks I'm great. Then there's a little ask in there. There's this, or a suggestion or something, you know, that is going to be maybe more for you. And then, but right after that, sandwich it with the other side of the bread, which is coming back to, again, how it will, that ask will also help them. So the end game is really a win-win for everybody involved, but you're starting the conversation with a compliment or something positive, then you're making the ask, and then you're quickly wrapping that back into how this is going to be beneficial for both of us. And so it's really kind of an irresistible solution. It's like an irresistible offer. This is a win-win for everybody. So why not do it? You know, you're great and I've got a great solution. So let's bring these two things together and propel this to the next level. That's how I approach the people with the big egos. I definitely try not to be confrontational with those people because that never really turns out well.
Yeah, they just dig in, and neither party ends up showing up as the better version of themselves. So that always ends badly. I love your sandwich metaphor. I'm going to borrow that with your permission. I think that's a great way to frame it. I really like that a lot. And what role do you find that creativity plays in a go? Because that seems like a creative kind of approach, right? Being very strategic about that, but allowing for that sort of creativity. What's been your experience around creativity and negotiations?
Think, you know, the creative part of it for me would be that outcome. The outcome really has to be perceived as a win-win, because if the outcome, if the negotiation is perceived as an ask, then it's going to fall relatively flat, or it might be a small something, a small compromise. But the creative part of the negotiation, in my opinion, is that the outcome truly feels like a win-win to both parties. And it takes a minute to think about that, because at first you're thinking about what you want or is going to be beneficial for you. That's natural. We all do that. But at the end of the day, the biggest results will come when the perceived outcome is that it's as much of as win for the other party. And so I think that's where the creativity really comes in.
Yeah, so good. I love that. And I think it's so often overlooked because we are so driven to just get our outcome. So I really want to put a pin in for our listeners out there as well, what Kasey's saying on that. Not just your outcome, but also really being intentional about getting to the root of what is the outcome that the other side wants here? What do they need? What are their desires? And how can I meet it, right? Getting that creativity. So I can't tell you in my career in law how many times I saw great deals sitting right there on the table and end up going sideways because one party was just focused on their needs and their outcome, and they couldn't see that there was a better solution, a better outcome sitting right there on the table. So totally get that. Now, you mentioned earlier that you do work with both men and women and that you notice some differences in certain things. So I'd love your perspective on what role, if any, you think gender plays in negotiations, or have you seen any differences in that?
You know, that's a great question. And, you know, I haven't really sat down and studied it. So this is just off the top of my head. And off the top of my head, you know, when it comes to negotiations, in my opinion, men tend to be a bit more matter of fact, and they tend to put their emotions aside. And women, when they approach the negotiations, oftentimes the very first part will be I feel. That the emotions come right to the forefront.
Yeah.
And so the approach can be different because it's sort of apples and oranges. Somebody's having more of a transactional conversation with the male
Yeah.
side typically, and the other person's having more of an emotional conversation. And so sometimes there's a little bit of a disconnect. It was like we're
Yeah.
literally not speaking the same
Yeah.
language. And so that's sort of a theme that I see come up a lot
Yeah.
between men and women with negotiating.
Yeah, I like that approach. That's so true. You've got that transactional versus this. And again, that's kind of circles back to when we were talking about creativity and that preparation piece, right? Like if you contemplate that, as you're going into a negotiation and you start asking questions instead of surrender that ego, get a little curious, you can get
Yes.
to the bottom of that. And I love that you mentioned about that emotions being right at the surface, because I think, and I'd love your experience on this in business. We tend to shy away. I think a lot of people, when they're faced with somebody, whether it's anger or upset or hurt, it's like, oh, I don't want to deal with this. And for me, I find sometimes that's where the real gold is. I talk about leaning into the
Yeah.
messiness, because when somebody shows that emotional reaction, that is like the gateway to find out what really is driving them. What is their big why? And if you can figure out
Yes.
that big why and get curious in those moments instead of standing back, you can actually get some really creative outcomes. What's been your experience around that?
Yeah, I could not agree with you more on that point. And also what you said before, I think that people underestimate the power of asking the questions.
Yeah.
So when you see that opportunity that somebody else is shying away or there is some emotional response, start asking the questions about, yeah, what are they looking for? What would be perfect for them? You just probe the
Yeah.
questions. You're going to learn so much. And you're like, oh, I didn't realize this is really their biggest challenge. I thought it was that.
Yeah.
And so, once you start to realize where the other person's roadblock is, then you can start to position the negotiation for a much more powerful outcome for both parties.
Yeah.
So I could not agree with you more that asking the questions of the other person before you're getting ready to negotiate, or really any opportunity that you have
Yeah.
to ask questions with
Yeah.
somebody that you planning to negotiate with, any opportunity to ask questions. I can't tell you how many times I've asked my clients, well, what do you think the other person wants? What would be perfect in their world? And they say they don't know. And I'm like, well,
Yes.
we maybe want to know that before we make a plan here.
And sometimes they're really easy gives. I mean, that's the thing that,
Yes.
like it's a no cost item to you, whether financially
Yes.
or emotionally. And
Yes.
sometimes, the more you get curious and ask questions, it can be something that's totally outside what you think you're negotiating about. Like, I mean, I try to really be, and somebody may mention, whatever, like, oh, blah, blah, blah. It comes up. I always wanted to write a book. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm the chair of the Northwoods Literary Festival. So I can introduce you to some publishers if you want. So things that are totally outside the box of where you think, that can ultimately make the difference in moving the dial. So I like that.
Definitely.
Now, what other stuff
Definitely.
would you say? You've got your sandwich method, which I love, and it sounds like you're very thoughtful sort of going in. Where are some other key things that you do to prepare, or that you find your clients miss in preparing to go into a negotiation?
Yeah. Oh, the questions are a big one. Always know the other side. So whether it is, somebody negotiating for career advancement or somebody negotiating in business, what is the ultimate goal of the other party? For the skincare line, we negotiated with someone who had international distribution. We didn't build that whole sales team. We partnered with somebody who had already that infrastructure in place. We had a product, they had the team. So how are we going to negotiate this? And we sat
Yeah.
down. They said they needed something new and innovative. We said, well, we have something new and innovative, but we don't have a sales force. So let's figure this out. And at the end of the day, we figured out like a royalty licensing sort of arrangement between all parties. It was a win-win for everybody. It worked out. And so that's one example. And people that are advancing their career and they're talking to an employer, or maybe they're negotiating with somebody in their personal life in the community. And it's always just about a dialogue at the
Yeah.
beginning and figuring out, okay, what is this other person looking for? Where is the opportunity? What do I have that maybe they want or need? And what do they have that I want
Yeah.
or need? And how can we marry these two things together? And I encourage people in business all the time, entrepreneurs in business. I think partnerships and collaborations are what propel businesses, But the art of negotiation is critical because that's how you establish collaborations and partnerships,
Yeah.
is negotiating a way that is going to propel both parties, both businesses forward to the next level.
Oh, so good. So good. Who are some of your favorite role models, or who would be your top favorite
Oh
role
my
model if you
gosh,
got
so
one?
many. So, I'm a big fan of Tony Robbins. I have studied a lot of Tony Robbins. I've been to a lot of events. So I really like Tony. I got certified through his life coaching programs as well. So I do a bit of kind of executive life coaching along with my business advisory. So Tony's
Yeah.
a big one for me. Susan Jeffers, who wrote the book Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway.
Yes.
She's also fantastic. I knew her personally. Unfortunately, she passed away, but I think she has fantastic principles in her books, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway.
Yeah.
So those are some of my two favorites. Both sort of growth
Yeah.
mindset is,
Yeah.
kind of the underlying theme there.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. That book mindset, speaking of, was a great shift for me. I'd always considered myself a growth mindset person. And as I was reading her book, I think it's Professor or Dr. Carol Dweck. I always get that wrong, but anyhow, the book's called Mindset. I don't know if you've read it, but
Oh, I haven't read that. I'll check it
oh,
out.
totally worth checking out. Because, like I say, I always thought I was growth, but as she's checking off the things that show that sort of fixed mindset, that, and it often happens, I think, when you do well when you're young, you're so afraid of giving up that label, that sense of competence, that we end up stifling ourselves from truly taking chances and growing in life. So definitely worth it. And speaking of sort of mindset shifts and allowing yourselves to grow, what is one of the greatest mindset shifts that you would say you've ever had in your life? Doesn't even have to be on this business piece. It can be on anything, just one of those moments that changes how you see things, how you show up.
Oh, mindset shift. I think it's gratitude. Gratitude
Mm,
has been one of the most powerful tools
yeah,
that I've now implemented into daily practice. And, I never did, certainly growing up, and I never did, through
yeah,
college years or my early years in career or early entrepreneur years. And then, without it, you tend to see the negative side. And if
yeah,
you, implement these daily gratitude, whether it's journaling. I'm not a big journal, but my husband and I verbally say thank you for something small. It can literally be say thank you
yeah,
for taking the trash out. Thank you for changing the cat litter. It could be, it
yeah,
doesn't have to be a business big thing. But every single day we are grateful for something in our relationship, or we'll be grateful for our environment, or, family or friends or health or whatever it might be. Or it could be a big celebration if we have something bigger that we're celebrating. But every single day, we will say something we're
yeah,
grateful for at least 2 times a day, to train our brains to see the positive side. And for
yeah,
me, that's probably the biggest mindset shift, is implementing some element of daily gratitude, whether it's journaling or verbalizing, because your brain truly will reprogram to see things more
yeah.
positive if you can implement that in daily practice.
Oh, such a game changer. That's a big one. And it's funny, I was just having that conversation with my son the other day. He's been having a bit of a rough patch, one of my boys. And I was like, Chase, try just gratitude. Like every day, think of 3 things that no matter how tough things are, you're always able, if you allow yourself to
Right.
go there, to find things you're grateful for. And I want for our listeners to really put a pin in something else Kasey just said, because that's a different spin on it. I love that you and your partner have this where you make a point every day of finding something that you're grateful for about your partner that you can thank them for. I think that is beautiful. It is such a small thing, but what a relationship game changer that is, to be able to just show that appreciation, even when you're mad at them, especially when you're mad at
Even
them.
when you're mad, especially when you're mad. That's the best time, especially when you're mad. You're having a little argument, and then a couple minutes after the argument, I'll say, "Okay, but I didn't say thank you today for something," and then he'll be
Yes.
quiet, and I'll be like, "Remember, you have to say your thank you to me too." So then we
Yeah.
laugh, and and all of a sudden the argument dissipates because it just seems frivolous at that time. So it's even more important during those times when you're mad at them or you're having a
Yeah.
little spiff over something.
Oh,
Yeah.
that is so smart. Gosh, I'm laughing because I'm thinking yesterday, I mean, I had an issue with my husband where I started going off on something. I wish we'd spoke yesterday. That would have totally
Yes.
changed that moment, Kasey, let me tell you.
Yes.
Well, I
Yes.
can't believe how fast our time has gone. But for our listeners, Kasey, like me, as you probably noticed, speaks really quickly. So you guys really practically got 2 podcasts in one here today. You got all kinds of value. So, Kasey, where can people learn more about you? Where do you want to send them?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram at Kasey D'Amato. My website is kaseydamato.com. So you can connect with me either place. So I would love to have you. I'm developing soon a Facebook group to help entrepreneurs.
Nice.
So lots of resources coming out to help people mindset and business get to the next level. So feel free to shoot me a DM on Instagram at Kasey D'Amato, or contact through the website anytime. I always love to talk shop and help people. It's my passion and mission to help service-based providers take their life and business to the next level.
Oh, so good. And we'll make sure to put that in the show notes. And for everybody, if you're just listening and you want to check her out and send a DM, that's Kasey with a K and with an EY at the end. So we'll make sure to have that there for you. So thanks so much for joining us, Kasey. You got some beautiful gems for us here today. It was great to have this conversation.
Thanks for having me, Cindy. It was fun.
And for our listeners, I have no doubt you got lots of value from this. If not, like I say, we both spoke really quickly. Feel free to slow her down and listen again. Make sure you don't want to miss any of those beautiful gems. And make sure to subscribe if you haven't done that already. And share. Give the gift of, we're talking about gratitude, give the gift of sharing that with anyone that you think can get some value from this message. And especially given a lot of the talk, negotiation, all of life is a negotiation. There were some really beautiful gems here today that'll help you both personally and professionally. So make sure to share that. And before we sign off, as always, just want to share some ways we can work together. If you are looking to up-level your negotiation skills, I've got everything from online to group to my signature one-on-one VIP experiences or masterminds to help you better leverage your innate power to get more of what you want and deserve in life. So check out our website at artoffemininenegotiation.com if that sounds interesting to you. And make sure to grab my book, The Art of Feminine Negotiation, How to Get What You Want from the Boardroom to the Bedroom, if you have not done that already. And leave a review. Gosh, it's tough getting those things. So don't be shy, leave a review. And that is a wrap for this episode. So until next time, go forth and negotiate your best life on your terms so you can stop missing out and start getting more of what you want and deserve from the boardroom to the bedroom. Until next time, take care.